Hi everyone, welcome back to the Workforce Computer Training Excel Jumpstart series. My name is Alva Santiago. In this video, we're going to look at database functions. So we're going to use some functions to start with a D so that we can dynamically, based on a criteria, be able to see how much revenue was generated from a company and what was the quantity they bought, how many times they placed an order, and get any other information pertaining to that company. So let's get started. Here's our data set. We want to make sure that we put it in a way that if you select the company name, we'll be able to see the amount, total amount that they purchased from us and how many quantity of pieces they bought and some other data. All right, let's get started. The first thing is to move down my data set so I can create these filters above all of this. So I'm going to select rows 1 through 4. I'm going to right click on any of the selected rows and select Insert from the drop-down menu. And we're going to avoid doing a lot of typing today. So we are selecting row 5. I'm going to copy Control C and bring it up to the top inside the first row and Control V as in Victor to paste. Right, I'd escape for the marching ants. So what I would like to do is first be able to have a drop-down list here under company name so I can select. Except I don't want to just select all of this list of company names because they are repeated, as you see here. I want to be able to just have one of each company, so only a unique company list, and have them in alphabetical order as well. To do that, I am going to select my company name list first. So I place my selector on the label or the field name. Let's start calling this field name as we're going to treat this as a database. So on the field name, company name, and then I'm going to Control Shift down arrow, and they're all selected. Copy, Control C. I'm going to put this list on a new sheet. So I click for a new sheet here and I paste. Next, I would like to get rid of the duplicates. To do that, I go to the Data tab and I click on Remove Duplicates. It's going to recognize the list of data that falls under the header, company name, and that is correct. There we are. And I click OK. And it'll tell us that 2066 duplicate values were found. Now we have 89 unique values left. So we are going to click OK. And yep, we only have one of each company. Now I need to put them in a sorted by sending order. So all I have to do is back into the Data tab. There's an icon that shows Sort A to Z that's ascending. I click on that one, and here we are. So now I'm able to create a list with unique company names, and they're alphabetized. The next thing I like to do is be able to create a name for this list of companies, because anyone that works with data validation knows that you cannot reference the data outside of the worksheet. And as you can tell, the invoices sheet is separate from this one here. So the only way to work around that limitation is to create a name, give this list a name. So I'm going to go ahead and select the entire list. And then from the Formulas tab, inside the Define Names group, I click on Create from Selection. And this is correct. Top row is where the name is for this list. So I click OK, and it's been named. If you have any doubt, you can click out of it and then go over to your name box, click on the drop down arrow, and you can see that it captured the name. All right, we go back to invoices. We're ready to get started. We go over to the top, so I'm going to Control up arrow. I'm going to situate my selector where I want my list to be on A2. I go to the Data tab. I click on data validation because I am creating a list. The data validation dialog box opens. Under the settings tab, I click on the drop down arrow and I select list. I'm going to press on the F3 on top of my keyboard. I have those F1 through F12 keys on the very top over the numbers on my keyboard. So I press the F3. It will show me the name that I have available in this workbook. I select it and I click OK. Of course, you can type it if you want to do some typing. And now this is pulling in the list. I click OK and I have my source. And it has all the company names right listed. All of them are in here in alphabetical order. So I'm selecting any at first. The next thing I would like to do before we start creating our functions is to be able to name my data set here so that we don't have to reference from A5 all the way to J and down to the end. To name it, I'm going to have my selector inside the data set anywhere, doesn't matter where, and press Control and the A for all. And you selected your entire data set. And now I go over to the name box and I'm going to give this data set a name. I'm just going to call it data and enter. So now I can simply use data inside my function so it can know exactly where to pull from. All right, let's get started with the first one. So I go over to amount and we want to pull up the sum of the company name that I am showing here on the left. And every time that I click on the drop down list and I select a different company name, that it will pull up the sum for that company. So it does it so fast that if you blink, you miss it. So let's get started. Let's say you're doing this for the first time, don't know where to start. I will suggest that you click on that little FX that sits on the left of your formula bar. And there's a larger one on Formulas tab here on the left of that ribbon. Either one is the same, so click on it. And suppose that you don't know which one to start with, but you know you're doing a database function. So you type in database inside this little search window and you click on Go. And now it pulls up all the functions that start with D that has to do with databases. So we're doing a sum to start. So I select DSum and I click OK. And now it requires 3 criteria to be answered for this to work. First is asking, where's the database that we need to, you see, is the range of cells that make up the list or database. So a database is a list of related data. So ours is called data. We named it. Or you can F3 and select it from the list. And the thing about this function, it's called a smart function because it knows how to read labels. For the field, I don't just click on the column, which I can just click on J5 and then let it look at amount and pick up amount because it knows how to read and just go and match amount up there on the filter. I don't do that because it's going to just count the columns that amount is found in, just the column. So it'll say column 10 internally, and it'll keep it like that as long as the function's up there. It'll always look for a column 10. Well, I don't want to do that because if my data set changes, someone adds a new column, deletes a column, it's still going to keep the 10 as a fixed column to look in. Instead, I did say this is a smart function. I'm going to tell it what to look for. I'm going to tell it to look for the amount label, and it will read that. And wherever amount moves to, it will always find it. And now I got the amount is the field that I wanted to look at. The criteria is based on, since it knows how to read, it will telling the formula, look for this word company name on A1. It'll find it down on the data and the value that follows it as well. So criteria is A1 through A2. And as you can see, it's already giving us a result. I click OK, and there's the amount. Now I'm going to click on Control, Shift, and the number 4 for the dollar signs very quickly here. It's just a quick shortcut, Control, Shift, 4, and I have it in currency. So I can easily now go over to company name and switch it. And if you blink, you missed it. It gives you the sum very quickly. So now let's do the quantity. We know that it'll be a sum of quantities. So again, equals DSum. I tab. The 3 criteria that we know are the database. So data, comma, field, and this field is quantity. So it's not case sensitive, by the way. So I'm just typing quantity and close my double quotation marks, comma. That's how you move through the different text boxes you saw before. And the criteria is still the same, company name and the value of the company name. We can click enter now since it only has one open paren. It'll close the other and we have our quantity. Next, let's do the unit price. We don't want to sum the unit price. That won't make any sense, but we can average the unit price the company is buying from us. So for that, we do the equal DAverage. So as I start typing DAV, I can see there's only one that starts with those letters. So I tab and it's DAverage. The criteria is still the same. So the database is still data. The field this time is unit price between double quotation marks, and please type it exactly as you see it with the space after unit price, comma, and the criteria has not changed, company name and its value. And I hit enter and there's the unit price. This is the average unit price, so I'm going to make it currency, Control Shift 4. There you have it. The ship date, I am going to leave those alone. We don't have to worry about these. As a matter of fact, we can hide them if we don't want to use these fields. So I can select the E through G. I can right click on it and then hide and down from the drop down menu. So now I open up the view just a bit more since we have more room, and we're ready for the order ID. So the order ID is counting how many orders they've placed, not the quantity of pieces they bought. So we start with equals DCount this time because we're counting orders, and that's the one we're using. Data is our database, comma. The field is the order ID, comma. And the criteria is company name and its value. So we can easily select any company from the drop-down list and see our results immediately. So now we're going to find the country this company name is doing business from. To do that, we can't use any of the D functions because those are just calculating. Now we're doing what's called a Vlookup. V for vertical. Our lookup has to go row by row until it makes a match and then come over to the right and pull out a country that company name belongs to. So we're going to be doing a Vlookup. Now there are 2 rules to remember, and if you follow these, you can always do a successful Vlookup. One is that the value you're trying to find inside your data set, or better yet, your lookup table, should always be, or has to be actually, in the leftmost column. I didn't say column A because it doesn't matter what the leftmost column is, as long as you identify it as the first column it needs to look in. So it could be starting all the way out in D or J or any other column. It would not matter. As long as you tell the formula that's the first column to look in. In our data set, we have it all in the A column, and so it makes it easier, but please don't get fooled by that. The second rule is that once it makes a match, as it will go vertically and make a match So it says equal true, found. Now you need to know which of the columns does it pull the data from. So that's rule number 2. It doesn't understand ABC, but it does understand the number column index. So you need to know which column to move to grab what you need. So once it makes a match, you have to say making the match is number 1. And then you have to say go to column number 2 to pick up country. If it was salesperson, it would be 3, order ID 4. So it only knows to move to the column number you indicate. So let's get started. Here we go. Equal V, L for lookup, and there it is. Now I want you to get some help here so that you know how to do this again and again. So by clicking the FX, either one from the formulas ribbon or this small one here, I am going to answer these questions. Now there are 3 required because they're bold, and the last one is not, so it's optional. So it's asking what is the lookup value? So the first lookup value is the company name I have exhibited here on A2. The second text box asks me, where do I look for this value? Where's the table array or the lookup table? Lookup table is still data. The third one asks us, okay, once we make a match on the left column, on the leftmost column, what column does it move into to get the value you want? So the company name is column 1, so country is column number 2. And you can see there's getting some results here. However, I want to see what the last box is asking me. Well, if I leave it blank, it's going to do the closest match. But I'm a little skeptical about that. So I'm going to answer that and say, no, I want it to be false, as I'm reading it down below, so it can be an exact match. But I'm not typing the word false. I'm just going to put 0 because 0 will always be false. So 0 for false, 1 for true. So I think I'm done. And as you notice here, let me take my 0 out again. Please take a look. It said Brazil, that my company was in Brazil because it found a closest match to that company name, but not an exact, not yet. But when I set 0, it had to match every character in that name. And so the company is actually in a different country, in France. So I click OK, and there we have it. So now when I change my company name, it'll find it in the correct country. There we have it. I have the count of order ID, the average unit price, and the sum of quantity and sum of the revenue that I've generated. Thank you everyone for being a good student. In part 2 of the database functions video, I'm going to quickly illustrate how you can filter your data set to only those values that match the drop-down list selection, as well as how to refresh your data when you change that company name.